Welcome to the second video lesson for lesson number 2 from A Fresh Approach for the Beginning Percussion class. In this lesson, we are going to learn a new scale called the chromatic scale, and we're going to learn a new notation symbol called the flat sign. Once we do that, we can start our first reading exercises that we have in the book and get used to reading a few notes on the treble staff. So let's start at the top of the lesson 2B, the second half of lesson 2, with half steps and the chromatic scale. So we learned in our last few lessons that we can have a C and an F as a home bass key, and then we can name the naturals using our musical alphabet, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So hopefully you can go up and down the C scale, naming those notes. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So C to C, I can use my musical alphabet to go up, or I can use my musical alphabet to go down. C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. So in Western music, we tune our notes by half steps. So using the naturals is good, but we also use the accidentals. And if you'll notice how they're placed on a keyboard, a C up a half step will be the note that's in between the C and the D. Okay? So if I go straight up by half steps, I'm playing every key of the keyboard. So do this for me. Play from C to E and use those accidentals in between. So, right? You see how I'm moving back and forth from the naturals to the accidentals? And then I'm always hitting those accidentals in the center of the bar. Let's try that together. 1, 2, ready, go. All right, so you can kind of get used to moving back and forth. Now, as I'm playing my piston stroke, I'm having to move my arm forward so that I can hit that bar, the accidental bars in the center, and then I move back to the normal position for the natural. So it's kind of getting used to not only playing with a great piston stroke, but moving your arm back and forth. Let's do that C to E again. 1, 2, ready, go. So you kind of get used to how far you have to move your arm. If you move it too far, then you're going to wind up striking on the note. So you kind of develop this kinesthetic feel for how far you're moving. Now I can keep going as I move from my E. The next half step, there's no note in between here, so E to F is a half step. Then I can keep going from F, and then I'm moving straight up between my naturals to my accidentals. So start on F, and let's go all the way up. F, G, A, B, and then again, my last half step is between here because there is no accidental up there. So start on F. Let's play quarter notes on every single note. Ready, go. We call this a chromatic scale. So chromatic scale means that we play every single note on the keyboard, both up or down. All right, let's try that chromatic scale first with the right hand, and then we'll do it on the left. Okay, as I'm moving from my natural to my accidental, I just want to push the forearm forward, and then when I have two natural notes in a row, E to F or B to C, I just keep my arm in a consistent place. So let's try C up to C and stop. 1, 2, ready, go. Keep going. All right, now we can go back down the chromatic scale just by playing every single note on the way down. So it's just kind of getting used to moving back and forth and visualizing where every single key lies on the keyboard. Start on C and go back down. 1, 2, ready, go. All right, so it's not that hard for us to start being able to play a chromatic scale. Okay, it's much, much harder if you're playing clarinet and you have all these different fingerings. They don't actually do a chromatic scale until much, much later because of all of the fingerings that they have to use. But for a keyboard player, playing every single note is not that difficult. All right, let's move to our left hand. Now we're going to go up and down without stopping. So C. I'm going to play my chromatic scale. When I get to C, I'm automatically just going to come straight back down. Let's see how you do on this. 1, 2, ready, go. Piston stroke every single time. Now back down. So you see how that piston stroke is a quick down, up, down, up, down, up, and then I'm moving my arm. So practice that a few times on your own keyboard, okay? Getting used to playing those chromatic scales with one hand and then the other hand. In our next lesson, we're going to combine that and then learn how to alternate into a new exercise. But just so you can get the layout of how those half steps work, learn your chromatic scale. So whenever we want to notate an accidental on the musical staff, we use a symbol. When we're going down a half step, we use a symbol called the flat sign. A flat sign looks like a B. So if I have a natural on the keyboard and I go down a half step, I use the natural note name and then I say flat after it. So if I find the note E, so C, D, E, I have E natural. If I want to go down a half step to this note, I would call that note E flat. So I can call out a few other note names just to see if you can find flat. So basically, I find the natural and then I go down a half step. So find the note D. All right, C, D. Here's D. Where is D flat? I just go down a half step. So this note is named D flat. Find the note A. C, D, E, F, G, A, or I can go F, G, A. Here's the note A. Now find the note A flat. So I'm just going down a half step from the note A. Find the note B. All right, here's B. B flat is that note. Find the note G. Now find the note G flat. All right, so I can make a game of this. I could just call out a natural and then ask you to play that same natural as a flat. Let's try a couple. A flat. D, D flat. G, G flat. B, B flat. So that's kind of a good game just to get you to realize that the flat sign just lowers a note a half step. Now there's also, if I have a note F and I go down a half step, if I call it F flat, since there's no accidental raised pitch in between, F flat is the same thing as the note E. It works the same way with C. C flat. So those two notes can be called by different names, and we'll learn a little bit about that later. But any natural note can have a flat. All you do is lower it by a half step. All right, so our very first music reading exercise that we have is just using one note, the E flat. Now, I start on the accidentals in the book because they are the easiest to see peripheral, using your peripheral vision to the keyboard from the music. very easy to find the note E flat. So it's just the top of the two accidentals. So this whole line is very much like the snare drum line. All I'm doing is playing quarter notes. Whenever I play a quarter note, I use my nice piston stroke. Whenever I have a rest, I don't play. All right, let's play this line. If you have read music before or if you've done the snare drum part, this is pretty simple. I'm going to set my metronome on 60. I'm going to have a little subdivision, so I'm thinking ands between each note. I've got my note E right here, and I'm going to use piston strokes. 1, 2, set and go, and, rest, and 2, and 3, and 4, and. Rest, rest, 3, 4. All right, now I'm assuming kind of that you have done the snare drum part, that you know how to read quarter notes and quarter rests in quarter time. But in case you don't, anytime that you have a note, you play the note. Anytime that you have a quarter rest, you don't play, but you're thinking to yourself, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, a couple of things just percussion-wise. On snare drum, I really emphasize how you should tap your foot to every single beat and then play your foot on every rest. It gets a little strange on keyboard, namely because we're having to lean a lot when we're playing keyboard. So you could do it probably on this very first note. You can tap your foot while you play, but I'm not going to encourage you to tap your foot when you're playing keyboard. All right, only because you're eventually going to have to use a lot of footwork on keyboard, and you're not marching in time, so there's really no reason to develop that coordination. Develop the coordination on the snare drum, just play it on the marimba. Now, the other thing is when we're starting on the accidentals, all right, if I set myself up to play E natural, I have a little bit of space between the bottom key and in my body, okay? Because that's where it's just so natural, okay? But as I move up to the accidentals, I have to move my hands forward. Now, if I know that the only thing I'm playing is accidentals, I can move up to the keyboard. I can use less space, but we don't want to be right on top of the keyboard. Still keep a little space, all right? Move your arms forward, and then every single note, make a great quality of sound. Let's play that line one more time. And 1, 2, set and go. And 1, 2, 3, 4, rest, 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 rest. Rest, rest. All right, see how I'm striking right in the center of the bar in between every single stroke. It always starts up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. All right, I'm alternating. You can play it all with one hand. You can play it all with your left hand. I really encourage you to alternate as we're going through these, okay? And then making sure that I am keeping that nice relaxed on your down up stroke between the palm of your hand and your back fingers. All right, let's look at line number 2. So a few more rests in here. You're playing on notes. This is where you have to really keep your eyes on the music. Now, I talk about a lot when I'm teaching to have your music stand really close to the keys, kind of overlapping your accidentals as close to the keys without touching, right in the center. The book is right in the center of the key that you're actually playing on. Can't really do that while I'm teaching you a lesson, otherwise you wouldn't be able to see my hand. So I've got my music stand way over there. But when you set up your keyboard, your music stand, make sure it is right in front of that E flat, making sure that it is close to the key without touching it as possible. Don't have it way up here, have it right there. And then you will be able to use your peripheral vision to see that E flat without looking directly at it. So as you're playing this line, make sure that you keep your eyes on the music and try not to look down as much as possible. Now we'll wind up looking down here and there, but we want to keep our eyes focused on the key or on the music, and then use that peripheral vision. You know what peripheral vision is, where you see something without having to look directly at it. Use your peripheral vision to kind of feel where those keys are. All right, now let's try line number 2. Same basic one note scale, or I mean one note all the way through. All I'm doing really is reading the rhythm. Keep your eyes on the music and use your peripheral vision to see the E flat. 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, 3, rest. 1, 2, 3, rest. 1, rest. 3, rest, rest. 2, 3, rest. All right, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this line because it is only one note. And if you can play it on snare drum, you can play it on keyboard, except for I really want you to pay attention to using those great piston strokes. We're going at a very slow tempo, so it's not very hard, okay? What you do not want to do is memorize the line and look directly at the keyboard, okay? What we're going to develop over time, if you get your eyes off of looking directly at the keyboard, we're going to develop what is called, long word, kinesthetic feel. So a kinesthetic feel is where you know the layout and you can kinesthetically, without looking directly at it, without touching it, you know where those notes are. All right? So we're going to develop that kinesthetic feel by using our peripheral vision, and then pretty soon as we add more and more notes, we don't have to look directly at our keyboard as we're playing. All right, another new note, F. Guess what? We know the F. F is our first home bass key. But in this line, we're moving back and forth between our F and then E flat. So as we start moving around, we're going to do a couple of things just to kind of get you used to moving back and forth between notes. First is that I want you to find those 2 notes on your keyboard, and then I just want you to play around with those 2 notes. So make up your own melody and just play on those 2 notes going back and forth, and pretty soon you're developing that kinesthetic feel for what your hands have to do to play those notes in the right space. Then the next thing that you do is find the line. Okay, we're on line number 3. We have 3 beats to a measure. What we're going to do is, without the mallets in our hands, we're going to actually touch the keys and say the note names. So by touching the keys, I really don't have to look at my hands. So I can practice just going back and forth here. I'm touching the keys. I'm not having to look down at all. So let's go through this line, touch the keys, say the note names. 1, 2, ready, go. F, 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 rest, rest. E flat, rest, E flat, E flat, rest, rest. F, F, rest, E flat. So if you can say it and you can touch those notes, then you'll be able to play it. Really quickly, look at measure number 3. In measure number 3, I have an E flat. I've got that flat sign in front of an E. I have a rest, and then I have another E. So why is this not E natural? Because when you turn a flat sign on at the beginning of the measure, it's like hitting the caps lock button on your keyboard. It remains in effect for the entire measure. So every E in that measure is E flat. The bar line turns off that caps lock button, and then you have to say this is E flat again. All right? So when we've done those 2 things, first taken our mallets and kind of played around with those 2 notes, and then we've said the note names, then you're ready to play it. So let's try it. Slow tempo. Starts with an F. So I really want to be able to feel kinesthetically what it's going to feel like to move my hands back and forth, but I want to keep my eyes on the music. 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 1, rest, rest. 1, rest. 3, 1, rest, rest. F, F, rest. E flat. Now right now what I'm doing is each measure or a couple of measures I'm moving back and forth, okay? I'm moving both of my hands back and forth. So you want to take that line, go very slowly, all right? It's not hard counting rhythmically because I'm either playing on the beat or resting, but I'm moving back and forth between those two notes. So now keyboard is becoming harder than snare drum, right? Because now I've got multiple notes that I'm moving around. All right, last line. I want to look at my time signature. Notice that I'm in 2/4 time again. All right, I'm still using the same two notes. Okay, I've got the E flat and I've got the F. So let's finger without the mallets and say the note names in this line. Now you can leave your left hand on E flat and your right hand on F, or you can alternate. I like to alternate because I like to get used to what my arms are going to do while I play these. 1, 2, ready, go. E flat, E flat, E flat, rest. F, 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 rest. E flat, rest. F, rest, rest, E flat. So I don't have to move both hands to my F and both hands to my E flat. I can keep one down here and play that. That's fine. So we have those two notes, okay? Now you can pick up your mallets and you can play a couple of little melodies. You can experiment. Just so you can develop that kinesthetic feel between the two notes that you're going to play. Now we can play it. All right, so there is a pattern to how I work up a new line. Until you get really good and you can sight read a line, which some of you maybe can because you've been playing piano for a long time. But if you use this pattern of fingering and saying the note names, then experimenting and playing your own measure or your own music, making up something on those couple of notes, then actually playing it with full strokes and alternating, then you'll be able to play the line, okay? But if you're trying to sight read it for the first time, you might mess up. Let's try this whole thing. And 1, 2, set and go. E flat, rest, F, 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 rest, E flat, rest, F, rest, rest, E flat. Now all the way through the line, I'm looking ahead. I'm trying to find the next note, all right? I never linger on the note that I've already played. I'm already looking ahead. If you've got a couple of rests, then there's no reason why you shouldn't just kind of catalog that in your head, do the rest, and then play the last note. All right, so in this lesson, we have covered the chromatic scale. All right, so I want you to practice that with one hand going up and down, playing right in the center of every bar. It's really getting used to your kinesthetic feel of what it feels like to do this as you're playing. And then with your left hand. In our next lesson, we're going to learn how to alternate that. You learned about flat signs, and we've done all of the music reading. So really perfect your music reading. Spend some time every lesson going back to the speed note reading test in the appendix and doing a bunch of those lines until you get faster and faster. Right now we're only notating a couple of notes at a time, but eventually we're going to just keep adding and adding to it. So work through this, perfect all of those lines, and then you're ready to move on to lesson number 3.